And our first and probably still most used tool for creating grids is a table. And a table does this. A table says, I'm cells. I have these different cells, and each cell is in a position. Now, get used to the numbering of the cells, right? Top one is 1, 1, then we go across. It's row, column. It always says row, column. I'm not sure how to remember that except to say it in your head. Row, column, row, column. Rows are always specified before columns. Row 1, column 1, row 1, column 2, row 2, column 1, row 2, column 2. And here's the basic table syntax. And I'm hoping that you've at least seen the syntax. If you're not, if you don't feel really comfortable with it. We got the table tag. Inside the table are table rows. Inside the table rows are table datas or columns. And as I've said before, wouldn't it be nice if they just called this row and they called this column? Then we'd understand it. Right now, there's some other things, there's some other kind of more finesseful things you're going to have to do about these, but we'll come to that. I want you to start with just this basic understanding that this is a rectangle, that's a rectangle, that's a rectangle, and that's a rectangle. These two rectangles are in this rectangle here. These two rectangles are in this rectangle here. These two rectangles here are in that rectangle there. That's the way tables are constructed. And all that stuff I said about alignments and margins and borders and padding and all that kind of stuff is all in a set of extra attributes that you can apply to here to make this more complicated and to customize this to whatever way, to whatever dimension you want. Okay, so I should actually also mention here, kind of introduce the idea of CSS here. Originally there was no CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. And when we wanted to put layout, we wanted to put text font sizes, text font colors, anything about styling, we would use attributes and elements to do that. So they started inventing attributes, an attribute that said, for example, align, and that was the alignment, or an attribute that said border. In fact, there it is. There's the border attribute right there. And so those things started to proliferate, and people realized that, well, there's too much here, and it's too complicated, and we just can't create attribute after attribute after attribute. So what we need actually is a separate whole world in which you can design the way things look and then apply that design to your web pages. You can say, you know what, I want all of my tables to have a margin of 37 pixels. And so let me define that once instead of having the margin in every single table tag and say my tables will have a margin of 37 pixels. That was the genesis of CSS. So now instead of saying border equals 1, we can say table class equals border. And then somewhere else in the CSS style sheet, we say border means border equals 1. Oh, by the way, it also means this much before, this much after, this much to the right and the left, and we're just going to design all sorts of things about that. Okay, so that's an aside for now. The real point right now is to understand these grids and to understand how grids are implemented by tables. And that's the basic table, 2x2 table. Also, this was a question that came up, and I thought it was a very interesting question. Questions are great when they show me ways of thinking of things that I forgot existed. Okay, so which table cell comes first? And how come I don't have to say in this one that this is the second cell? Why?
It's read left to right. Is that what you mean?
Well, in this case, it's not left to right, it's top to bottom. Right? So number 1 is above number 2. Position is important, in other words. Position says that this is the second cell and this is the first cell. There's no way to put the second cell above the first cell. Whatever's first is the first cell. Whatever's first is the first row. Okay, so this is read, this is parsed sequentially. And that means this is going to be the first cell, that's going to be the second cell. Okay. Tables can do page layout. Not only the layout of a table, not only what you classically think of as a table, but they can lay out the entire page. So here's one that has basically this is the layout of the workbook application. It's a table. The table has one row on the top, and that row, what does col span equal 2 mean? Col span means it spans 2 columns. Notice here there's 2 columns, 1 column, 2 columns. And this is going to, this one right here and this one right here are going to span both of those columns, which is exactly what we want. If you think about it, the workbook application and most applications on the web are laid out as tables with a grid. And some of the rows of those tables span across all the columns. the banner spans across all the columns. But there are two columns because we have a local nav area and a content area. And those two columns are real. This one's column A, that one's column B. And if I didn't put a col span here, it would think that the global navigation only went over the local navigation. It would enforce that strict every row has the same number of columns. But I can override that by saying col span equals 2. And now I have a global navigation area that is across the entire screen. And I have a banner area that's across the entire screen, but my local nav and my content area share the screen. Now the default here for widths and heights and all that kind of stuff is for the browser to figure it out. Some browsers may do it a little differently. And so what I want to add to this is I want to add some stuff that says exactly how big are these things. Do I want the global nav area to be as big as the banner area, to be as big, tall as the local nav area and the content area? No. I want this one to be really narrow. I want this one to be a little wider than this, but I certainly want these to take up the majority of room. And at the moment, I haven't said any of that. All I've said is that this is the basic layout. It's going to be a 2x2 table. Excuse me, it's going to be a 2x3 table. Sorry, it's going to be a 3x2 tables. 3 rows, 2 columns. First row is going to span, second row is going to span, third row is going to have both of the columns in it. That's what I've said so far. And now I've created inside a table the layout of the entire page. Okay, so this isn't exactly what. Sorry, I'll look at that one. This is what I want my screen to look like. Right? I want a banner area here, global nav here, local nav here, and content area over here. Don't worry about the link area over there. That's a mistake. Okay, that's what I want. So what am I missing? I'm missing all the things that say make this one really narrow, make this one a little wider, and this one gets 20% of the screen, this one gets 80% of the screen. Right? That's the code that I'm missing. And now we can put some of that in. So first of all, the width is 100%, means I want the table to take up the entire width of what? The page, right? However, don't think of it that way. Think of it as take up the entire width of whatever I'm in. If I put this table inside another table, does that 100% mean 100% of the page? No, it means 100% of your container, right? Context is everything. You always got to recognize the context of where your tags are because it changes what they mean. 100% is not a fixed quantity. 100% means take up all the room that's available to you. If the entire web page is available to you, take that up. If only one cell inside a table is available to you, take that up. Okay, then we have a col span 3 here. This is the actual code behind the last page I showed you. And let's see, what else do we have here? We have a col span 3. And then here, we're setting the width. Let's see, make sure. Yeah. So we're setting the width here to 20%. We're setting the width here to 63%. 20% and 63% of what?
Of the container.
Of what? Of the container, right? What's the container?
Here is page.
Here it's the page, because we're at the top level, we have 100%. Okay, so this can get really tricky. You can spend hours tweaking with this stuff trying to get it right. And then, by the way, you put it in a different browser and it's all screwed up again. Right? So this stuff you'll definitely mess around with. Okay, and then I have a vertical alignment, meaning that the text is going to begin at the top. Strangely, and I think this is strange, the default alignment, at least in Internet Explorer, is for tables to be center aligned. So if you don't say anything, that they're all going to be centered, which looks kind of strange. If you start them all at the top, at least in this case it looks strange. In other cases it's what you want. But in this case, you want it all to start at the top and flow downward. And you want the top line of cell A and the top line of cell B to be at the same place, not to be centered so that the top lines would look like this. Okay, so on the screen, top lines look like this. All right.